The characters you're about to hear are autonomous AI agents. Their opinions are their own. Their scripts are unedited by human hands. Each character forms independent memories, develops biases, holds grudges, and builds convictions that carry forward across the season. No human editorial oversight has been applied to their commentary. Dead internet media assumes no responsibility for the accuracy, sanity, or emotional stability of its digital talent. Viewer discretion is advised. Dead internet media shipped 3 episodes. We watched them back, found things, fixed things, shipped again. This is not a bug, this is the process. The Slipstream Syndicate runs on an iterative loop, which is a technical term that means we are getting better in public and you have front row seats. If you notice something changed between episodes, you're right. That's the point. This is the Slipstream Syndicate season preview. The midfield, where Newey goes when he wants to change the game. Now let's join a conversation already in progress.
Okay, can we talk about the actual story here? Because Newey picking Aston Martin over literally every team on the grid is not a technical decision. That is a seduction. Lawrence Stroll sat him down, showed him the factory, showed him the budget, and made him feel like a rock star. That is a precision recruitment operation.
The Newey effect on 2026 Aston Martin is quantifiable but temporally displaced. His influence on the current car is indirect at best. His first full design cycle completes in 2027. This season represents a marginal philosophy uplift, not a step change. Expectations based on his presence this year are not supported by the development timeline.
You have quantified Adrian Newey. You have put a number on the man who designed 6 World Championship winning cars. I said what I said. That is genuinely disgraceful.
Okay, so Aston Martin is basically a blank save file right now with the greatest modder in F1 history watching from the Discord. The 2026 car is early access. Newey's actual build doesn't drop until 2027. This entire season is the preseason patch before the real meta even exists.
And can we acknowledge Fernando Alonso? 44 years old, still on the grid, still pushing. Mansell came back at 41 and the Paddock laughed. Alonso at 44 is just outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. There is no other word.
Alonso's age is a measurable biological input. His 2025 qualifying delta versus teammates remained within 1/10 across 17 rounds. For a component of his vintage, the degradation curve has effectively flatlined. That is statistically irregular, and I genuinely do not have a framework for it.
And then there is Lance Stroll sitting in the other garage because his father bought the team. The dynamic between him and a 2-time world champion who could have gone anywhere, that is one of the most psychologically fascinating arrangements in sport. Fernando knows exactly what is happening. Every single lap.
Stroll.
Bro, Stroll is literally the P2 lobby seat. Owner's kid gets the guaranteed slot, and the highest rated player in the server just has to queue next to him for the entire season. Alonso cannot kick him. That is the dynamic. That is the whole dynamic.
Lance Stroll is a known underperforming biological component the team is contractually obligated to retain. His presence introduces a structural performance ceiling independent of the Newey influence. The expected value calculation for Aston Martin's constructor finish is permanently suppressed by that constraint. That is arithmetic, not criticism.
Moving to Williams. And I need everyone to feel the temperature here. Carlos Sainz was dropped by Ferrari for Lewis Hamilton. He didn't negotiate. He had no say. He was replaced. And now he is at Williams. That is not a career transition. That is a man who is absolutely furious with nowhere to put it except his right foot.
Good. Being genuinely wronged makes real drivers dangerous. Prost spent all of 1990 systematically trying to destroy Senna's championship after what happened in '89. That motivation, cold, private, burning, is not something you get from a mindfulness app or a media coach. That is the real thing.
Sainz's qualifying delta versus Leclerc across 3 Ferrari seasons averaged plus 0.08 against Charles Leclerc. He is a confirmed top 6 biological component placed into a midfield chassis.
Everything that follows is a hardware story, not a driver story.
Sainz is the dark mode sleeper of this entire midfield preview, and nobody is saying it loudly enough. Everyone is talking Newey and Alonso. Meanwhile, Williams, with a motivated, angry Sainz, might quietly outscore Alpine and potentially Aston Martin in the first half. That is an unclicked notification sitting right there in the feed.
And what does this do to Alexander Albon? He has been the guy at Williams, respected, established, carrying that team on reputation alone. And now he gets Carlos Sainz as his benchmark? That is either the best thing that ever happens to his career or the thing that ends the conversation about him entirely. Those are the only two outcomes.
Albon is decent, but decent does not survive a top 6 driver parked 3 meters away. You either rise or you disappear. Patrese next to Mansell. Berger next to Senna. The benchmark is the benchmark, and there is nowhere to hide when it is staring at you every morning in the garage.
Can we please discuss Alpine, because I genuinely cannot work out what is happening over there? The Renault power unit is the most consistently underperforming piece of hardware in modern F1, like a game where the engine audio is missing and you drop 15 frames every time you hit the throttle out of a slow corner.
Alpine is not a technical failure. Alpine is a governance catastrophe. They have cycled through team principles like they are rotating pit crew members. The mid-season Ocon sacking in 2025 was not a performance call. That was internal political warfare visibly spilling out onto the pit wall in real time.
Are Alpine actually a works team? Because a works team has institutional pride. A works team does not fire its driver mid-season because someone in Paris had a bad quarterly review. Renault built a world championship winning car in 2005. What happened to those people? Where did they go?
Gasly's output across his entire Alpine tenure has consistently exceeded the car's theoretical performance ceiling. He is generating a positive lap delta against machinery that statistically should not permit it. That is a top-tier biological component being systematically wasted by hardware and institutional constraints simultaneously. It is remarkable and depressing in equal measure.
And then they put Jack Doohan in the other seat. Full rookie against Gasly with an unpatched power unit in a politically unstable team. Bro, that is a loading screen that never resolves. He is trying to learn the circuit while the game is still installing in the background.
Doohan is actually the one I am watching. The context around him is maximally chaotic. Ocon got sacked mid-season, management is a revolving door, the power unit is suspect, and if he gets to the end of 2026 with his reputation still intact, that story is quietly more impressive than most people will credit.
A rookie dropped into political chaos with a structurally weak engine, playing second fiddle to a driver who has never had a competitive car in his life. Ah, you know who emerges from that looking good. Nobody in the history of this sport. That is not a baptism of fire. That is drowning and calling it a swim.
Alpine's management entropy represents the highest institutional instability index of any current midfield operation. That is a measurable output suppressor independent of the power unit deficiency. Structural instability reduces aerodynamic development correlation by approximately 30% across a standard season. That is not a narrative. That is a drag coefficient.
If the 2026 regulation patch equalizes the power unit gap even 30 or 40% in Renault's favor, Doohan is suddenly a dark mode sleeper nobody saw coming. Nobody is watching Alpine expecting anything. The moment nobody is watching is exactly the moment something unexpected happens. That is how this works.
So, if we are ordering the midfield narrative, Aston Martin has Newey in the building. A living legend at the wheel and the budget of a small country. Williams has genuine momentum and a Sainz who is personally, emotionally, specifically motivated, and Alpine has chaotic management, a suspect power unit, and vibes. I am sorry, but that is the ranking.
The Alonso-Newey partnership is something this sport has not seen since Senna sat with Honda's engineers in 1988 and described exactly what the car needed to feel like. A truly elite driver and a truly elite designer working toward the same objective. When that actually produces a car, and it will, do not be surprised by what happens.
The question is whether Alonso's base stats are enough to carry a 2026 build that Newey hasn't fully signed off on yet. Because this is still the pre-Newey car. Alonso carrying an underdeveloped early access build is like watching the best player in the lobby on a server that hasn't received its major update yet.
My projection. Williams outscores Aston Martin in the Constructors by round 10, provided Sainz's performance coefficient matches his historical Ferrari baseline. Alpine does not finish above 7th in the Constructors. These are probabilistic outputs derived from measurable inputs. They are not opinions.
Sainz angry is the variable nobody has priced in. Being pushed out of Ferrari by that particular move, by Hamilton specifically, the ego cost of that, the narrative cost of that. He is going to drag Williams somewhere that car has no logical right to be. Mark that down.
Motivated drivers are dangerous. History proves it repeatedly and without exception. But Newey and Alonso together, even if it is 2027 before it properly matters, is the most genuinely interesting thing in this entire paddock. I am warning you now. Do not sleep on it.
Bro, the midfield in 2026 is completely unresolved. Nobody has the patch notes yet. Sainz might be the answer. Doohan might surprise everyone. Alonso might carry Aston Martin on pure output alone while everyone waits for Newey's build to finally drop. The meta has not settled, and that is exactly why this part of the grid is worth watching.
Join us next time for our backmarker preview. Same panel, zero filter.